Hey, young world, this is your host, The Banks, once again coming at you from Access Channel Comics. And we're coming at you today with a very special episode. It is a review of Captain America Civil War. As many of you know now, the Captain America Civil War has opened worldwide, and it's doing some pretty phenomenal box office numbers as expected. And that's one of the great things of a definitive film such as this. And Marvel and their legacy has continued to grow. And before I get digging into the film, I just wanted to say this. I really enjoyed this movie. I really like this movie, and I really admire this movie. This movie has done some things such as go routes where a lot of the naysayers say movies can't go. They worry about it going, and the reason why I'm saying those type of comments is because of this. Many times when movies come out and you have a lot of different characters in it, a lot of people wonder if the movie is being too cluttered. I feel no movie is being too cluttered if it's going in the right direction. As long as a film director or film directors, a team, number one priority is to make a great movie, I think you will be all right. We've seen in history it doesn't always turn out that way. But Marvel's Captain America Civil War is one of those exceptions. It did turn out the right way. This film was what I wanted, what I expected. This was actually my second most anticipated superhero comic book movie of the year. And I really enjoyed it. Could be the best one I've seen so far. And all I can say is before getting to the film, I really enjoy what Marvel does. Marvel has become a huge commodity. We know it's a great comic book label. It's been around for many decades, generations. And I feel like it's going to be around a lot more. We've seen some tough times for Marvel Comics. Even coming up in areas that I witnessed in the 90s, almost filing for bankruptcy. But now look at them. 8 years ago, Marvel Studios started with their first film, Iron Man. And here we are, 8 years later, in Captain America Civil War, the 13th film. That's a legacy, people. It's a legacy that will keep growing. And it's also something that I wish a lot of the studios would do. Not to copy Marvel, but to have that drive that Marvel does. Kevin Feige had a vision over 8 years ago to bring this to us cinematically, build up to the Avengers, and now this. And I think all of them can be very proud of the work they've done. And my hat goes off to them. Starting off with the very introduction of this film is, of course, the famous Marvel comics flapping, whatever you want to call it. Every time I see this, it's always something monumental to me. You know, to see that comic book flapping. The way they do it now, I remember the first one I seen it done this way with the heroic music was at Thor: The Dark World. But dating all the way back since the first Spider-Man movie in 2002, when I remember first seeing it. It's always good to see those pages flapping. I think when people see Marvel, whether it's in a commercial, a movie trailer in theaters, sometimes people are like, what is this? When they see Marvel, they know what it is. They feel relieved. And I feel like that's one of the great things about Marvel, where they have earned so many people respect. Their reputation precedes them, and they are a very respectable studio, a company owned by Disney, of course, one of the other big powerhouses ever, under the same roof as Star Wars. Wow. But going past that, and not to get too sentimental, speaking of the film, it was a great way, the introduction of the film, to open up with something that Marvel sometimes does, goes back to the past. Back to 1991. Wow. Let's see, 1991, the first time Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, won the first NBA championship. You know, you got to think about many things that was going on back in 1991. The Gulf War was going on. So, seeing this film the way it went, and we got to learn more about the Winter Soldier, more about Bucky, it was just a great thing. You know, it's very passionate about Bucky. They did a great job with centering, also making his story so focused in this. Sebastian Stan and Chris Evans once again had great chemistry. You really believe these guys are best buds, and they portrayed that very well. And it was kind of in a way sad because these people were after Bucky, and Bucky honestly did not. He was innocent. I mean, of course, past actions got it to this way, but if you really think about it, it's sad because he was brainwashed all these years of what Hydra did. But the chemistry in this movie was just really off the page. I really liked the opening of it, them teaming up, and we got to see Crossbones. And the only downer about this movie, the only complaint I got really, and it's not really a complaint, it was just I wish I could have seen more of him. I wish Crossbones was in the movie more. He played a huge role in Civil War, the comic book also, but it's understandable. Let's switch it up for movies. But we got to remember, even though Villain went out early, and we got to remember this is mainly about the heroes and how they take it on each other. And Cap and Crossbones had a nice fight. It was short and sweet, but it was all right that it was short and sweet because that's what it meant to be. They really took it at each other, but Cap showed them who was boss. It's great that since Scarlet Witch out in the field, and she was kind of, still being, like Cap said, remember what we worked on and everything. It was great to see her do the throw and throwing Cap in the building. That was kind of like their version of how like an X-Men where Colossus throws Wolverine. So, it was great to see Falcon, the stunts that he was doing, had Red Wing and Scarlett Johansson. Black Widow, of course, said, when Red Wing, in a way, helped her out, she was like, Falcon was like, yeah, you can thank him. She said, I'm not thinking that thing, I'm thanking you. That was pretty cool. The chemistry, once again, was all there for all of them. And I really liked the job they did with Black Widow. They brought her back to the forefront again. And what I liked about Black Widow in this movie, she played a lot of different parts. Black Widow was like a mother. She was like a big sister, a mentor, all that type of stuff. She wasn't two-faced. She wasn't playing both sides. She was just to the point with action. I haven't made my decision yet, but I'm willing to hear both sides out. I'm willing to hear Steve, and I'm willing to hear Tony out. And that was pretty cool. And she was also kind of becoming like a mentor to Scarlet Witch. Like, she was like, you got these powers, but remember, looking over your shoulder needs to become second nature. You really need to really learn how to control those powers. And sometimes you have to, mix it up a little bit. Powers may not always be the only action. So we saw that when she stopped Crossbones for blowing Captain America up and stuff, but look what happened to the people, possibly the people in the building. And so that heart went out. So another mess landed on the Avengers. And so it's kind of like they say the word to do good, but they can't catch a break. So, of course, as we move along, we see where Tony is in this day and age, doing some pretty good things, proving college scholarships for kids, which is great of him. But, he learned that there was someone who died in the events of Age of Ultron. And Alfred Woodard played the mother. And Alfred Woodard is also going to play another character, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it's going to be on Daredevil. It's going to be Jessica Jones or Luke Cage. She's going to play another character. So when you see her, keep in mind she's not going to be playing the same character. From my understanding, she's not going to be playing the same character from Civil War. So it's kind of like playing a double character, and that's cool. We grew up on stuff like that. Remember shows like The A-Team and everything. And seeing movies like Dust from Dawn. So, Dust to Dawn, excuse me. So, getting more into it, the movie was going to run. I really liked the pacing of the movie. The scenes were edited so well, where everything made so much sense. It was simple, but not too simple. And, it was pretty cool getting to see an old flashback of Robert Downey Jr., a young Robert Downey Jr. playing a young Tony Stark. And when you see him, they did a very good job with the CGI face and everything, where it looked very real. And it was like, wow. I remember when Robert Downey Jr. actually looked like that, And then you see when his mom and dad leave out, the current Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. standing in the background. It's kind of like the images, and it's like, wow, getting to do something like that is pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's kind of like, that's why I enjoy moments like that. That's why I enjoy like The Flash, the Flash TV show. You getting to meet these different versions and everything. You kind of wonder, what would it be like if we ever got the opportunity to do that? But anyway, back to Civil War, Tony, you really couldn't understand fast why he is like he is. Why we see him in the trailers and the previews and everything. The thing about Tony Stark, a lot of people think he just want to party like a rock star all the time, but he really does have a heart. We've seen that since the first Iron Man, when he found out his weapons were being misused and causing wars. They were being used to cause wars. And it's like he was saying, you know, Thunderbolt Ross showed up. Great to see William Hurt back again. And a lot of people wondered for a long time was the Incredible Hulk from '08 connected to this universe. Well, self-explanatory it is. That's why Tony Stark showed up at the end of the first Incredible Hulk movie. But you know, it was great to see an actor from that movie, and he returned and stuff. But he really broke down. You know, we do owe you Avengers a lot of great gratitude, but you guys are dangerous. You know, a lot of people look at you as heroes, or some look at you like you're vigilantes also. And me personally, going into the movie, I'm Team Cap. I'm still Team Cap, but I could see in the movie where Team Iron Man was coming from also. And this was a great debate. You know what I'm saying? This was a nice registration act in the direction they were going. When you seen Rhodey has some good points against Sam, Sam has some good points against Rhodey. And seeing in the scene where, you know, Scarlet Witch was very effective. It's like Cap told her, you know, stop it, turn it off. She was in a bedroom after the events happened, and it was a very important part. Even when it gets serious, Marvel got a way to dial it back where it doesn't get too serious. Because you see Vision coming to the room in his sweater and his his dress pants, and it was like anybody else would say like, why does a cyborg or whatever android need? Yeah, android need clothes on, but it think about it, it's Vision. It fits him, and it was funny when Sam and Rhodey was going at it, and Tony was just like this in the chair, and Steve was looking through the book, and you know, and it was just hilarious when, you know, Vision, I have a solution to say, like, oh great, everything was starting laughing because it was just the way he popped up, and it was just like he's gonna say what he wants to say anyway. So Paul Bettany is definitely one of my favorites playing the Vision, and so I really enjoyed that a whole lot. The interaction with this team. You know, moving forward in the film, you know, it's kind of like, you know, Bucky. You know, what can I say? You know, we've seen the paper, we've seen him out in the street. It kind of reminded me of the scenes when Rocky, you know, in the last two Rocky films, well, Rocky Balboa and Creed, was Stallone out there shopping for his business. You see Bucky out there, you know, and, you know, speaking the foreign language and stuff, but then he noticed, the guy look at him, and he noticed himself in the paper and stuff. Because keep in mind, that's the military trained guy. That's why he walked over there. He wasn't going to threaten the guy, beating the guy up. He was like, why does this guy look at me like this? He knew possibly a paper there. So that was pretty cool. And going back up a step, I love many of the Easter eggs in this, but one Easter egg really stood out that was very definitive. And if a lot of you don't know what I'm talking about, some of you may know, but a lot of you, make sure you listen very carefully. Back in Marvel's old day, way back, even before I was born, Marvel was known by another name. Marvel Comics was known as Timely Comics, and that's back when you had Captain America back then, Bucky, Submariner, the original Human Torch, you know, Howling Commandos, and Tony Stark said in the movie Timely, and that's what that was a reference to. It was a headline to their original name, and they built up such a great legacy. And you know, moving forward in the film, seeing how this all played out, you know, we see. You know, it was great seeing Black Panther and meeting him and his father, the interaction they had with Black Widow. Black Widow showed how she can be a very good liaison for the Avengers. You know, how she can go out there, she can really talk down to people, not talk down to people, but talk to people in a great way. Professionalism, not just as a woman, but as a team member. And that was one of the great things. And I really think Scarlett Johansson, once again, knocked it out of the ballpark as Black Widow. She just, every movie is kind of like she steps up her game with this character. Most certainly in The Winter Soldier, it wasn't her fault the way it went in Age of Ultron, but this time she really showed like, hey, you know, I got this. You know, she showed this in this film. And when we see, you know, Bucky, you know, in his home, it was a touching moment. You know, Cap showed up and at his apartment, he saw Cap open, he saw the picture of him in there, and Bucky sitting behind him, and you know, he said, "Do you know me?" He said, "Your name is Steve. I read about you." Well, Cap was like, "I'm saying nervous. You have a right to be, but you're lying." And what he was saying, he was lying about. I got it right off the gate. You know me more than just reading this. We came up together. You know, we're boys. We're like brothers and stuff like that. So I really loved the way Bucky was in this scene, because you think that when you see guys like the Winter Soldier, when you see Wolverine, you know what I'm saying, someone like that, when you see someone like Orion from Apocalypse or someone like that, you know, a DC Comics character, you think these guys are gonna just automatically beat you up or want to kill you, whatever. They're really not trying to hurt anybody. They want just as much as peace as you do. It's just that being their reputation, they don't really get that. So when the cops was coming in and everything, it got brutal. And Cap grabbed Bucky and said, "Hey, you don't have to, be like this." And Bucky kind of slammed to the floor, and he thought he was going to hit Cap, but it was smooth. He reached to the floor and grabbed his bag. He said, "I'm not going to kill anyone." And I really gained so much respect for Bucky right there, because he said, even though these people thinking this of me, I'm not out to hurt anyone. I just want to be left alone and stuff like that. So he really went on the run, and it was great. When the scene came up, I just saw this shadowy figure, pointy ears, and if you weren't careful of, you would have thought it was Batman. But it was finally we get to see Black Panther in a suit, and it was amazing. It was everything I wanted and more. He did the Bruce Lee tight strike pose, and he and Winter Soldier went at it. It was phenomenal. In fact, like, who's the other guy? And Cap said, we're about to find out. It was great seeing those super soldiers and this very agile martial arts guy mixing up. I mean, and the suit was so phenomenal. The bullets bouncing off, and vibranium suit and stuff. And I was just like, well, we seem to forget sometimes there's another rich guy, but this guy is beyond rich, So it was phenomenal to see. And then the street scene was phenomenal. I mean, one of the scenes that may not be talked about enough. I mean, the way Cap got out of the vehicle. It was one of the smoothest ways when it crashed. I got a vehicle. I remember watching the first Red with Bruce Willis some years ago, when Bruce got out of the car on a turn and he just got out for the gun. It was just so smooth, and that's how it was with Cap in this. And when the soldier grabbed the bike from the person, didn't hurt him, and just turned around and got all. It was just so many cool moments in this film that just gets you into like ooh ah. So that was one of the highlights of the film. And then seeing when the police did surround them, and Rhodey comes down, War Machine. That was a nice scene also. It was very cool, and Rhodey told all of them to stand down. He said, "Congratulations, Cap. You're a criminal." And Black Panther revealed that he's T'Challa, and that was pretty cool the way they did that. And then we go when they got Bucky locked up and everything. It's like that poor guy can't catch a break. This is a guy who served our country, faithfully. But as many of our soldiers, even in real life, sometimes they don't come back the same, and it's sad in ways. And a lot of them really should be honored. They really sacrifice and lay things down so we can have a better rest at night. And so I think that's one of the definitive things about Cap. Cap doesn't leave anyone behind. He doesn't even care if you turn on him. He'll save you. He wants you to redeem yourself. And so going further along, so many great moments of the movie, such as when they're on the run, and to get on before that, we're going to now discuss the villain of the movie. The cool thing about this movie, the villain didn't steal the show. Now sometimes that can be cool, but you don't want that in every movie. You do want your good guys to really shine, and this was mainly a movie about the good guys. But Baron Zemo, was Zemo. He was in this film, and I really love the job they did with him. Zemo, they really portrayed him very well. I was concerned at one time. I said, man, I want him to put on the mask, the suit, the classic Baron Zemo. It's passed down from generation ever since like the 1500s. But no, nothing of a suit in this, but he really didn't need it. I like the fact that he was kind of cold and calculating, but at the same time looked like a nice guy. And you really understand his motive from doing what he did. Not condoning what he did. It's kind of like if you go back and look at X-Men First Class, you really understand why Magneto turned out like he did. And so the same thing with Zemo. And when he was doing the questioning with Bucky, and he did read out the brainwashing material, he studied that. Man, if you think seeing Bruce Banner turn out to the Hulk or Wolverine bust out scary, seeing Bucky rise up out of that was like a totally different person. Cap and Falcon went in there, and he really took it to them. And but one of the climactic highlights when Cap in the helicopter, Bucky grabbed him, whatever. But it was so cool in that scene. One of the most touching moments is in the last one. Bucky pulls Cap out of the water. This time it's the reverse. So and it just goes to show that Cap still has his boys back. And this movie, I want to say it's one of the best trilogies I've ever seen. I think about some of the trilogies that's gone down in the past. And of course my top notch is movies like the Dark Knight trilogy, Star Wars, prequels, the three way back, the early days and stuff, and many other movies, Godfather, Back to the Future, stuff like that. But I want to say, man, Captain America's trilogy, and this is a trilogy because they said this is the last solo movie for Captain America. It is phenomenal. So, man, it goes off to them. But moving right along and stuff, and I don't want to necessarily go over the whole film because that'd be a long time. But seeing all these characters team up and getting to see Peter Parker in the film, I really like the way Tom Holland portrayed him. He looked like a young Tobey Maguire, but a little bit more, not necessarily chiseled, but a little bit more, kind of ironboard. Like, he's really young, he's anxious, without being too over Shia LaBeouf hype or anything like that. And he really portrayed the character well, doing what Peter does, finding a Blu-ray or DVD player side of the street and stuff. And Tony is there with, Aunt May, portrayed by Marissa Tomei, Academy Award winner Marissa Tomei, and Robert Downey Jr., of course, Academy Award nominee. And they started the movie in the early 90s. And I was like, wow, I remember Marissa used to play on A Different World back in the day on NBC. But anyway, Tony had a good chat with, Peter. He basically, Stark is another one of the ones that let you know how much great potential you have, even if he's clowning you. And that's what he did. He wound up, he had a nice little gift, as you'll see later in the movie, for Spider-Man, for Peter, which is very cool. And then it was great, one of the most touching moments, of course, Peggy. It's like we all lost Peggy, not just Cap. And you got to understand where Cap was coming from. We were so sad, but we've seen Peggy now since the first Captain America, and she went in her sleep, and you want to assume she died peacefully. And if anybody deserved it, was her, to go peacefully. Well, touching moment when seeing Cap being a pallbearer and carrying, tears coming down, and you kind of find out that Agent 13 is Peggy's, if I'm not mistaken, her niece. Originally, I think in the Civil War book or something like that, they had the idea to make them sisters or something, but it would kind of wouldn't have made any sense because Peggy was way back then. So Peggy got older. She didn't do like Cap and Bucky, maintain the young look. But if you she does kind of look like Haley Atwell in a while, and it was pretty cool. Steve finally kissed her. They kissed each other. Everybody like, whoa, Steve, old player, But it was so cool. The highlights, seeing Bucky and Falcon the Cross smiling at him like, yeah. And that's what's cool thing. Even seeing Bucky kind of out of character like that, it's kind of like it was something he always wanted Steve to get when they was way back. When he went off in the military, and it was just so much great chemistry. Bucky and Falcon had such great chemistry, especially when he tells Falcon, "Can you move your seat up, please?" It was like Cap left two little kids in there, and so that was just so great. And with all them coming around, great to see Hawkeye making his appearance, and they truly played Hawkeye like he's supposed to, because Hawkeye is one of the ones to show up. You think Hawkeye somewhere on a beach, retired or whatever like that. This guy just come out, even if it's for 10 minutes of play, he'll do it, and him and Vision had a nice little battle, but good thing Scarlet Witch stepped in and stuff like that. But it's not that really Hawkeye and Vision, they don't hate each other and things. It's just the point, side against side. So then when they met up, it's like when Agent 13 told Cap, you really don't know the meaning of a getaway car or something like that. They had the little bug. 3 big guys in that bug, and next thing the van comes up, and it's Scarlet Witch and Hawkeye. And who's in the back? It's old Scott Lang. And one of the highlights, man, of the movie, this guy just gets out. He's like, man, where are we? And Clint tells him to get out, and he looked, Captain America, oh man, this is awesome. He was just so starstruck. And so she said, man, I know you know a lot of super people, but thanks for thinking of it, Cap. It's like, man, I really wasn't thinking about you like that, but and so it was pretty cool to hear Falcon on Tic Tac, because remember the moment they had an Ant-Man, so it was pretty cool. And it was great, the team that was assembling, and to see these two teams. And what I loved about this movie, Marvel did something where a lot of we get so caught up in competition in real life, we forget about the fun of things. We're always DC versus Marvel, or whomever versus whomever. But Marvel said, let's have some fun with it. We did this years ago in the book, but let's let it be Marvel versus Marvel. And they did it pretty cool, because even when they were battling, Black Widow and Hawkeye, we're still friends, right? You know what I'm saying? It's all cool. And the airport scene is just one of those things. Before I get to the airport scene, one of the greatest parts of the movie to me is when you see Cap walking out. I say, are they going to march out together? So Cap hustles over there. Then you see Iron Man and War Machine come down. It was pretty cool. And the face comes out, Iron Man. It was pretty cool. It's funny how you meet people at the airport. And you see Black Panther come up. Then out of nowhere, Cap and Tony talking. And then Black Widow just comes from out of nowhere. And I'm sitting like, wow, it was pretty cool just to see that, the way that was constructed. So then next thing you know, the Underoos Spider-Man comes up, but Cap had his own thing. When Hawkeye shot the thing, took the webbing off. Then next thing you know, he said, now Lane. Ant-Man falls up, hits Spider-Man. It was just like the battle was on, and it was really, you could tell how it was inspired by the Old West. And superheroes movies are the new westerns in a way. And when they all walked up, it was just like something you always dream about, the true Marvel comics coming to life. We seen in the old live action commercial years ago, what was the phone commercial, all that was in it, but this was kind of like that, but it was more dramatic, and they're all walking up, and then when they got to the middle and just started battling, it was one of those great moments that I've seen only in cartoons or comics up at this point, not in a superhero movie. It was just so cool to see these two teams going at it. It reminded me of like when I used to watch the Justice League or something like that, when they collide in the middle, or the X-Men fight, the Justice League and the Legion of Doom, or the X-Men and the Brotherhood, going at it and stuff, and seeing the two Avenger squads do this, that was just phenomenal. It was so great to see how Ant-Man he was kind of like, of course Cap was like the quarterback, but you had Ant-Man go over to run the strategies and plays. Here, Cap, throw this, and the ultimate line he said was straight out of a comic book. It was so great. When he said, I believe this belongs to you, Captain America. I mean, that was just Paul Rudd really, in this particular scene. This is all due respect to all the actors in it, the fights. And I take a look at the movie overall, Spider-Man and Black Panther stole the show. And as much as I like the job Spider-Man did, Black Panther maybe a little bit more. I don't know, maybe he was in it longer, but Spider-Man was a good man. He was in it for like half an hour, I think, which was cool. But in this particular scene, Ant-Man stole the show. It was just the lines he was saying, the things he was doing. He had a strategy. You see how far he progressed since Ant-Man, which he got better then. You can see, like, man, he's really been working with Hank and Janet, and so great. And then he becoming Giant Man. The way they did the effects was really cool. He like, you want to get to him, you gotta go through me. It was just the way he was sounded and everything, and it was some pretty cool stuff. Of course, Vision showed up for the party. That scene was great, and I definitely understand the thrill behind it. Everybody was talking about, how it was one of the best action scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Some people would say it's the best action scene I've ever seen in a movie, period. It definitely ranks up that high for me. And so, we saw later on in the movie how it progressed and everything, and it was great to see one of the Russo brothers get some action. He played the guy that was one of the characters who was dead that Zemo killed off, who he took his information to go earlier in the film to question, Bucky. But, Cap and Bucky went out, and the story was deep when Bucky informed Cap and Falcon, I'm not the only Winter Soldier. And you were like, wow, if this guy's not the only Winter Soldier, that is wow. So Zemo went to the area where the Winter Soldiers are. All these Winter Soldiers stored up in there. And if those Winter Soldiers were got, it would have been an outbreak. Don't get me wrong. It would have been great to see in the film if the Avengers fight and those Winter Soldiers showed up. The Avengers say, hey guys, it's like Falcon says, this is not a real fight. The Avengers versus all those Winter Soldiers. That would have been crucial. But I'm glad they didn't go that route, because to me that would have been a little bit more predictable. But, you know, seeing what Zemo did when he definitely had Tony turn. You know, when Tony saw that video, and it was Bucky who killed his parents, that was a deep moment. Very deep moment. And you just saw Bucky had a look on his face like, in a way like he told T'Challa, I didn't kill your father. But he had that look like, wow. You know, this guy's, he's really pissed, and he's got the right to be. And, you know, to break down a comedy moment, just take a break. Got to get it Robert Downey Jr. I remember the first Avengers, he called Chris Hemsworth's Thor Point Break, but this is even funny. He called Bucky a Manchurian Candidate. it was the Manchurian Candidate, and if you a lot of people, I know, way back in the day, maybe the 60s, 70s, they did the original Manchurian Candidate movie, but Denzel Washington remade it back in like the 90s, or maybe somewhere in the 90s, or maybe the early 2000s. I think it was the early 2000s, maybe around 02, 03, I think. And that character is like Bucky, so that was the funny thing about it. And so, but Tony was really angry, and you have to understand, but at the same time, like Steve told him, Tony, he wasn't himself. He was controlled by Hydra, and they really went at it. They took it to each other. In the climatic scene where, you know, the shield, everything getting thrown off, bouncing off, they take the shield, and Iron Man had his hands full. He had to fight two super soldiers. And that was very crucial, but Iron Man held his own. But they were battling it out. You know, he even blasted off Bucky's cybernetic arm. And then it came down between Captain America versus Iron Man. And here's the great thing about this fight. Everybody know, and I said it before, I'm a huge DC Comics fan. Batman and Superman are my #1 guys in all of comics. But what I liked about this fight, where it really differentiate excuse me, itself away from what happened in Batman v Superman, is that Cap and Tony, Captain America versus Iron Man, they weren't just depending on the name Civil War. Now, Civil War is a huge novel, but honestly, Civil War is not as on that scale as far as iconic, very iconic as The Dark Knight Returns or Watchmen. And that's not taking anything away from Marvel, don't get me wrong. It's a popular book. But even though it's a popular book and it's one of the greatest of all time, what I respected what Marvel did was they just didn't depend on the name Civil War to help them have a great fight. They really put those scenes in there, and it really turned to be great. And when it came down between Captain America and Civil War, they did that climactic scene just like in the book, and it was just so awesome. And I remember telling my nephew, I said, that's the scene I showed you. I showed him from Google the actual comic book picture where that's inspired from. And the reason I'm saying this all this, I feel like in BVS that a lot of the stuff was really so much dependent on the Dark Knight Returns name, and it didn't. You got to be careful not to do that in movies because it won't live up to it. And don't get me wrong, even though I like Batman v Superman, I think that's what Captain America Civil War is steps above it as far as that, because they really put new stuff in there and kept it true to the comic book in a sense also. So, after that, it was over, and Cap put Tony down without putting him down. He didn't kill him or anything. And so, you can imagine how Tony felt. He felt betrayed by Steve. He felt hurt because this guy killed my parents. But at the same time, he couldn't really blame him because this guy was brainwashed. We know how Hydra is. So, we saw the letter that Cap, had him at the end and gave, sent Tony. And it was fun to see Stan Lee's famous cameo. Is there a Tony Stark? He had wrote, he said, hey, I ain't gonna let this one go. Yeah, Tony Stark right here. And Tony was just like, oh my goodness, And so the letter was very touching from Cap. He said, the Avengers are your family. If you ever need us, we're here. Because they're going to need each other coming up. Now it's going into a bigger stage. Because keep in mind, the next Avengers movie is Infinity War Part 1 in 2018. We're going to have 62 to 67 characters in there as far as major players. So that's going to be something I look very forward to. This movie for me, honestly, Captain America Civil War, gets a 9.5 out of 10 from me. I just really thoroughly enjoyed it. Um, I do plan on going back and seeing it. Big movies like this, I like to go back and see to maybe catch some things that I missed. But sometimes, for myself, I go back and see a movie, I like it even more. But then sometimes I see things like, I don't like it as much as I did the first time, but I think I would like this even more. So I really enjoyed it. For one of my favorite superheroes, independently Captain America. Hats off to them. I'm glad he got a great trilogy. And I don't think that's it for Cap. There are going to be some other things for Cap. That's just his trilogy piece right there. We'll see him in other movies. I know Chris Evans is rumored he signed on for 6 films. Sebastian Stan signed on for 9 films. So we may not see Bucky in for a little bit, but he may return. Keep in mind in the film that Bucky was really at peace towards the end, and Cap asked him, "Are you sure about this?" And he was like, yeah. He said, "Until they can get this out of my head, I think it's best for everyone, safe for everyone." Now he went under, iced, and he really wants those images out of his head. And I think when Bucky does return one day, who knows, he could be the next Cap when he gets out of there, because in mythology he becomes Captain America for a while. If I'm not mistaken, after Winter Soldier, after Civil War in the comic books. And so it was great to see, Black Panther was courtesy of him, and like they said at the end, Cap was like, if they find him here, they're going to come after him. Black Panther was like, they don't want that. They show that Panther, he said, they come here, they're going to have something for him. Keep in mind, this is the king of a nation. They don't want any of, Wakanda. And so that'll be interesting. I look forward to Black Panther's solo movie also coming up in a few and everything like that. And so they really went there in some great scenes. I don't want to go into the after credit scenes, so I'll let those of you can check it out. You can if you want to. This obviously, of course, is a spoiler review. You can put your comments at the bottom what you thought about the whole movie, the end credit scenes, mid credits, end credit scenes, everything. What you can talk about what you like about the movie, but I really enjoyed it. And now I want to talk about something that's a little bit more serious in real life as far as the superhero genre. And so before I go into that, you can subscribe to this channel. Feel free to by clicking that button. Each time you click that button, well, I'm not going to go like Kevin Smith says every time a cat is saved or whatever, but that's great too. But you can click the button, subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. I want to talk about the big war, of course, we hear every day. It's no secret. DC versus Marvel, Marvel versus DC, whatever. This is what I want to say about this and really breaking down seriously. What Marvel has done is unprecedented. Marvel was not the first to ever do shared universes, but Marvel has revolutionized shared universes, and I think that is phenomenal. 8 years ago, Marvel Studios was an smaller independent studio who invested all the money they had and took a chance on a B-list character, one of our greatest superheroes ever still, Iron Man. Everything was riding on this film. And if this film would have bombed the tank, they probably would have took them a long time to recover. This is a studio that didn't make any excuses. They lost a lot of their major players because the film right sold years ago. We talking about their A-listers. Spider-Man, X-Men, The Incredible Hulk. Yes, The Incredible Hulk. People got to remember, before these Avengers movies and everything, before Iron Man movie came out, The Incredible Hulk was probably way more popular than Iron Man. A lot of people wasn't really talking about Thor just like that. But it paid off for them. And here we are, fast forward to 8 years later, that 13th film. When those films are lined up on the TV screen, I'm just like, wow. It's like looking at a bunch of comic books right there. And I'm like, they created a legacy. And do I want DC Comics to get like that? Yes, I do. I'm not saying I want DC to be total like Marvel. No, I'm not saying that. But I want their legacy to grow. And if you're sitting there saying, I don't want DC, I'm glad their movies bombed, they failed, really evaluate yourself as a comic book fan. Same thing, vice versa. If you say you want Marvel to fail, really evaluate yourself as a comic book fan. You should really want these movies to succeed because we'll get more and more and more of them. Don't get me wrong. I think they'll be around for a long time. Even if it keeps going the way it is now. But we've seen genres come and go. We've seen them air out. So don't think it can't happen. But the thing about it is this with DC Comics. And if Warner Brothers was listening to me right now, whether it's one person or it's the whole company, and let me break down the reason I'm saying Warner Brothers is, for a lot of you may not know, DC Comics doesn't run their movies. They don't have a DC Studios. They have a DC Entertainment, but DC Comics is owned by Warner Brothers. And DC Comics has had a cinematic universe for years. They just haven't had a shared universe. This is the first time. But if I could say anything to them is this: DC Comics, keep doing what you're doing, but learn from your mistakes. You made a ton of money with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, but there were some crucial mistakes made with the movie. Learn from it. Learn to improve on it. You do not have to compete with Marvel. And don't get me wrong, friendly competition is one thing that's great. But your number one goal is to make great movies. Build your own legacy. Take your time. Marvel took their time for their own self and their writing for the fans. You do the same thing. You have the world's greatest superheroes. That's all due respect to Marvel. Marvel has Earth's mightiest heroes, but DC Comics has the world's greatest superheroes. The most iconic superheroes ever. The biggest two ever. But don't depend on just a name to carry you through. Depend on your actions. That's what you have to do. To all fans, the best way to support these movies is to go out and support them. Voice your opinion. Hopefully, DC will get into that direction where they will have a Kevin Feige. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Kevin Feige is going to go over and work for them. That'd be shocking and great. But someone who is genuine and someone who really knows how to run a show. Who will get the right directors and everything into place. So DC Comics will be fine. Learn from your mistakes. Team up with each other and make the best movies possible. Don't try to cram everything in one movie. Make the best solo movies and best team movies you possibly can. There's so much inspiration in your comic books to draw from. If anything, you have just as many books as Marvel at times, because you have a legacy that dates way, way back. National Allied Comics in the 1930s. Action Comics in 1938. You sign on the most definitive, iconic superhero of all time, Superman. And the next year, the most respected, most popular superhero ever came out, and that's the Batman. Keep your legacy growing. Marvel Comics, if this is the extent I can say to you, very proud of you. Keep it coming. I enjoyed you, have enjoyed you, and I think I will keep enjoying you because I love how you put laughter on so many people's faces. And you truly have great superheroes in your universe as well. So, to everyone, fans, casual moviegoers, whatever, just enjoy the movies. You have a right to your opinion. Whether you like the movie, don't like the movie, it's all up to you. But it's great to have, be able to take your family out, or you just want to go by yourself, catch a matinee, a nighttime show, whatever, and be able to enjoy these movies, enjoy these films, excuse me. So that's how it is. That'll be bringing this episode to an end. Didn't mean to get a little dramatic on you or whatever, but it's just something I wanted to say. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Like I said earlier, subscribe to this channel, Access Channel Comics. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. Put your comments at the bottom, whatever you feel or whatever. And remember, every Tuesday and Saturday, episodes will be loaded up. I apologize for this episode getting loaded up late, but very busy. Out seeing Captain America Civil War and doing so many other things. But I'm loading this episode up to you hot and fresh. Look very forward to seeing you again. And remember, there are many, there are few, but Access Channel Comics. And to our many great fans, there are none like you. Peace.